Of such great powers or beings, there may be conceivably a survival. Survival of a hugely remote period when consciousness was manifested, perhaps, in shapes and forms long since withdrawn before the tide of advancing humanity. Forms of which poetry and legends alone have caught a flying memory and called them gods, monsters, mythical beings of all sorts and kinds. Algerian Blackwood. Part 1. The Horror in the Clay. The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of a human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little, but some day the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality, and of our frightful position therein, that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. Theosophists have guessed at the awesome grandeur of the cosmic cycle in our world and the human race from transient incidents. They have hinted at strange survivals in terms which would freeze the blood if not masked by a bland optimism. But it is not from them that there came the single glimpse of the forbidden eons which chills me when I think of it and maddens me when I dream of it. I'll tell you in a little bit, Evan. Let's see. But it is not from them that there came a single glimpse of forbidden eons which chills me when I think of it and maddens me when I dream of it. That glimpse, like all dread glimpses of truth, flashed out from an accidental piecing together of a separated things. In this case, an old newspaper item and the notes of a dead professor. I hope that no one else will accomplish this piecing out. Certainly, if I live, I shall never knowingly supply a link in so hideous a chain. I think that the professor, too intended to keep silent regarding the part he knew, and that he would have destroyed his notes had not sudden death seized him. My knowledge of the thing began in the winter of 1926 to 1927, when the death of my great-uncle, George Gamel Engel, Professor Emeritus of Semitic Languages in Brown University, Providence, Rhode Island. Professor Engel was widely known as an authority on ancient inscriptions, and frequently have been resorted to by the heads of prominent museums, so that his passing at the age of 92 may be recalled by many. Locally, interest was intensified by the obscurity of the cause of death. The professor had been stricken whilst returning from the Newport boat, falling suddenly, as witness said, after having been jostled by a nautical-looking negro who had come from one of the queer dark courts on the precipitous hillside which formed a shortcut from the waterfront to the deceased's homes in William Streets. Physicians were unable to find any visible disorder, but concluded after perplexed debate that some obscure lesion of the heart, induced by the brisk accent of a hill by so elderly a man, was responsible for the end. At the time, I saw no reason to dissent from this dictum, but latterly I am inclined to wonder, and more than one. As my great uncle's heir and executor, for he died a childless wood, I was expected to go over his papers, and with some thoroughness, and for that purpose moved his entire set of files and boxes to my quarters in Boston. Much of the material which I correlated will be later published by the American Archaeological Society, but there was one box which I found exceedingly puzzling, and which I felt much averse from showing to other eyes. It had been locked, and I did not find the key till it occurred to me to examine the personal ring which the professor carried in his pocket. Then, indeed, I succeeded in opening it, but when I did so seemed only to be confronted by a greater and more closely locked barrier. For what could be the meaning of the queer clay bas relief and the disjointed jottings and cuttings which I had found? Had my uncle, in his latter years, become credulous of the most superficial impostures? I resolved to search out the eccentric sculptor responsible for this apparent disturbance of an old man's peace of mind. The bas relief was a rough rectangle less than an inch thick and about 5 by 6 inches in area, obviously of modern origin. Its designs, however, were far from modern in atmosphere and suggestion. For although the vagaries of Cubism and Futurism are many and wild, they do not often reproduce that cryptic regularity which lurks in prehistoric writings. And writing of some kind, the bulk of these designs seemed certainly to be, though by memory, despite much of the papers and collection of my uncle, failing in any way to identify this particular species or even hint at its remotest affiliations.
I concur.
Above these apparent hieroglyphics was a figure of evident pictorial intent, though impressionistic execution forbade a very clear idea of its nature. It seemed to be a sort of monster or symbol representing a monster of a form which only a diseased fancy could conceive. If I say that my somewhat extravagant imagination yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall now be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head surmounted a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary rings, but it was general outline of the whole which made it shockingly frightful. Behind the figure was a vague suggestion of a cyclopean architectural background. The writing accompanying this oddity
cyclopean is my trigger.
was, aside from a stack of pressed cuttings, a Professor Engel's most recent hand, and made no pretense to literary style. What seemed to be
Wait, Engels? Are we fucking commies now?
What isn't your fucking trigger?
Everything's his fucking trigger. He's drunk as shit.
Hey, I am not drunk, okay?
To be fair, I don't know if I'm actually pronouncing his name right. I think it's Angels. It's spelled A-N-G-E.
Anus?
Shut the fuck up, Evan.
Engels.
Sean, are you still there?
Guys, play nice.
Oh, okay. What seemed to be the main document. J-Con, edit that shit out, please.
Alright.
Isn't fucking here.
Actually, I'll be editing this, so...
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Mike, edit that shit out.
Okay.
What seemed to be the main document was headed Cthulu Cult, in characters painstakingly printed to avoid the erroneous reading of a word so unheard of. This manuscript was divided into two sections, the first of which was headed 1925, Dream and Dreamworks of H.A. Wilcox, 7 Thomas Street, Providence, Rhode Island, and the second, Narrative of Inspector John R. LaGrasse, 121 Binville Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, at 1908 AASMTG.
You said
Notes
Cox.
I fucking swear to God.
Sorry, that's my bad. Continue.
How much alcohol have I consumed? Not enough.
A lot.
Much.
Anyway, would you like to proceed? Oh, God.
My trigger,
Ow, my
please.
ears. My ears.
I hate that show so much.
My
show?
anus.
What show?
My leg!
My leg!
Why they? My people did not go through this.
I'm sorry, Mike. I didn't mean to make you deaf. Please edit this shit out.
So guys, what show?
I'm gonna have a... Isn't that Adventure Time? Or...
Oh.
The Lemon Dude. I hate
Okay.
that show. Anyway,
What do you what? What about a lemon party? What about a lemon party?
Oh, this is gonna be so much fun to edit, but please continue. That's fine. I don't care. Just you can do whatever.
The other manuscript papers were brief notes, some of them accounts of the queer dreams of different persons, some of them citations from the theosophical books and magazines, notably W. Scott Eliot's Atlantis and Lost Lemur, and the rest comments on long surviving secret societies and hidden cults, with references to passages in such mythological and anthropological source books as Fraser's Golden Bow and Miss Murray's Witch Cult in Western Europe. The cuttings largely alluded to outre mental illness and outbreaks of group folly or mania in the spring of 1925.
Mental illness is my trigger. Check your privilege.
The first half of the principal...
Can we have a trigger counter?
Told a... Yes! We need a trigger counter.
Alright,
First half
that'll be another
of
thing I edit in.
manuscript told a very particular tale. It appears that on March 1st, 1925, a thin, dark young man of neurotic and excited aspect had called upon Professor Engel, bearing the singular clay bas relief, which was then exceedingly damp and fresh. His card bore the name of Henry Anthony Wilcox, and my uncle had recognized him as the youngest son of an excellent family slightly known to him, who had latterly been studying sculpture at the Rhode Island School of Design and living alone at the Fleur de Lis building near the institution. Wilcox was a precocious use of known genius, but great
French is my trigger.
had from childhood excited attention to the strange stories and odd dreams he was in habit of relating. He called himself psychically hypersensitive, but the staid folk of the ancient commercial city dismissed him as merely queer. Never mingling much with his kind, he had dropped gradually from social visibility and was now known only to a small group of ascetics from other towns. Even the Providence Art Club, anxious to preserve its conservatism, had found him quite hopeless. On the occasion of the visit, ran the professor's manuscript, the sculptor abruptly asked for the benefit of his host's archaeological knowledge in identifying the hieroglyphs of the bas-relief. He spoke in a dreamy, silted manner which suggested pose and alienated sympathy, and my uncle showed some sharpness in replying, for the conspicuous freshness of the tablet implied kinship with anything but archaeology. Young Wilcox's rejoinder, which impressed my uncle enough to make him recall and record it in verbatim, was of a fantastically poetic cast which must have typified his whole conversation, and which I have since found highly characteristic of him. He said, "It is new, indeed, for I made it last night in a dream of strange cities, and dreams are older than brooding Tyre, or contemplative Sphinx, or garden-girded Babylon." It was then that he began the rambling tale which suddenly played upon a sleeping memory and won the fervent interest of my uncle. There had only been a slight earthquake tremor the night before, the most considerable felt in New England for some years, and Wilcox's imagination had been keenly affected. Upon retiring, he had unprecedented dream of a great cyclopean cities of Titan blocks and sky-flung monoliths, all dripping with green ooze and sinister Latin horror. Hieroglyphs had covered the walls and pillars, and from some undetermined point below had come a voice that was not a voice, a chaotic sensation which only fancy could transmute into sound, which he attempted to render by almost unpronounceable jumble of letters. Cthulu Fakan. This fumble jumble was the key to a recollection which excited and disturbed Professor Angle. He questioned the sculpture with scientific minuteness,
German triggers
studied with
me.
frantic intensity the bas-relief on which the youth had found himself
Bas-relief
chilled
triggers me.
and cloud, only in his like over him. I hate you all so goddamn much. My uncle blamed his old age, Wilcox afterwards said, for his slowness in recognizing
Wilcox is my trigger. Professor Angles is my trigger.
I don't mean to interrupt, but you're beating this joke like a dead horse. I'm sorry.
Evan, please.
Dead horses are my trigger.
Evan, check your fucking privilege, you piece of shit.
What are you gonna do if I don't? Call the cops?
I will call
Bitch,
the
I
cops,
might.
don't you?
Do it, faggot. You won't.
Oh, cops!
I'm doing it. I'm doing it right now. Hello, 911. Yeah, there's this ginger faggot over Skype. Yeah, he keeps telling me everything's his goddamn trigger. He's triggering me with his
Oh my god!
my post-traumatic stress disorder from the internet is
My internet PC
Oh, God.
is triggered right now.
My face is so red.
Please,
I can't
What you
afford
get
it!
for
SWAT to help
being a
me.
Jew.
SWAT Evan.
Evan, you're drunk. Go home. Go home, Evan. You're drunk.
Get off
I'm already
Skype.
at home.
Get off Skype, Evan. You just sober up.
You're too drunk for Skype.
No, I'm not. I'm just drunk enough for Skype. That's on my blog.
Do it.
My uncle blamed his old age, Wilcox afterwards said, for his slowness in recognizing both hieroglyphs and pictorial design. Many of his questions seemed highly out of place to his visitor, especially those which tried to connect the latter with strange cults or societies, and Wilcox could not understand the repeated promise of silence which he was offering in exchange for an admission of membership in some widespread mystical or paganly religious body.
Listen, consent.
When Professor Angle became convinced that the sculpture was
Professor
indeed
Angle is my
Gesundheit.
or system of
Please stop
cryptography, besieged his visitor with demands for future reports of
H.P. Lovecraft is my trigger.
this more regular fruit for after the first interview of the manuscript records daily calls of the young man, during which he related startling fragments of nocturnal imaginary whose burden was always some terrible cyclopean vista of dark and dripping stone, with a subterranean voice or intelligence shouting monotonously in enigmatic sense impacts unscribable, save as gibberish. The two sounds frequently repeated are those rendered by letters Cthulu and Relay. Yeah, Mike, you might as well just label this drunk readings of H.P. Lovecraft.
Will do.
Because I'm tipsy and he's drunk, so.
I am not drunk.
And Shauna is Shauna.
And Shauna.
Yep.
And you're doing pretty good so far, Mike. So.
Yep.
On March
I'm
24th.
Shauna?
Yes, you're
That's
Shauna.
all?
All right,
I was hoping I'd be something.
you are super special,
I like to think that
Shauna.
Shauna's always naturally drunk, even though she's not really drunk.
Naturally drunk Shauna.
On March 23rd, the manuscript continued. Wilcox failed to appear, and inquiries at his quarters
Hey, listen,
revealed that he
Wilcox
had
is my
taken
trigger.
with obscure.
Stop saying Cox.
Taken to his home of his family in Waterman Street. He had cried out in the night, arousing several other artists in the building, and manifested since then only alternations of unconsciousness and delirium. My uncle once telephoned the family, and from that time forward kept close watch of the case, calling often at Thayer Street office of Dr. Toby, whom he learned to be in charge. The youth's febrile mind apparently was dwelling on strange things, and the doctor shuddered now and then as he spoke of them. They included not only a repetition of what he had formerly dreamed, but touched wildly on a gigantic thing miles high which walked or lumbered about my dick. He at no time fully described.
Wait, what
this
did you just say, my
but-
dick?
Bitch, you heard me. But occasionally frantic words, as repeated by Dr. Toby, convinced the professor that it must be identical with nameless monstrosity he had sought to depict in his dream sculpture. References to this object, the doctor added, was invariably a prelude to the young man's subsidence into lethargy. His temperature, oddly enough, was not greatly above normal, but the whole condition as otherwise such as to suggest true fever rather than mental distress.
I'm mentally distressed,
Mental disorder.
okay?
On
I'm mentally
April-
disordered, okay? That offends me. I'm so triggered right now.
Evan, we don't want fucking dick pics, you piece. Oh my god. Oh, okay, thank God. I literally thought he was sending dick pics, Mike. I really got it. On
Which
April
I
2nd,
might be.
on April 2nd at about 3 p.m., every trace of Wilcox Milady suddenly ceased. He has sat upright in bed. Malady. I think it's Malady. Suddenly ceased. He sat upright in bed,
Malady.
astonished to find himself at home and completely ignorant of what had happened in dream or reality since the night of March 22nd. Pronounced well by his physician, he returned to his quarters in 3 days, but to Professor Engel, he was of no further assistance. All traces of strange dreaming had vanished with his recovery, and my uncle kept no record of his night thoughts after a week of pointless and irrelevant accounts of thoroughly unusual visions. Here the first part of the manuscript ended, but references to certain of scattered notes gave me much material for thought. So much, in fact, that the only ingrained skepticism then forming my philosophy can account for my continued distrust of the artist. The notes in question were those descriptive of the dreams of various persons covering the same period in which young Wilcox had his strange visitations. My uncle, it seems, had quickly instituted a prodigiously far-flung body of inquiries amongst nearly all the friends whom he could question without impertinence, asking for nightly reports of their dreams and the dates of any notable visions of some time past. The reception of his request seemed to have varied, but he must, at the very least, have received more responses than any ordinary man could have handled without secretary. This original correspondence was not preserved, but his notes formed a thorough and really significant digest. Average people in society and business, New England traditional salt of the earth, gave an almost completely negative result. though scattered cases of unease, easy but formless nocturnal impressions appear here and there, always between March 23rd and April 2nd, the period of young Wilcox's delirium. Scientific men were little more effective, though 4 cases of vague description suggest
Apparently,
fugitive
my headphones have been
escapes.
on backwards.
And in one case, there is mentioned a dread of something abnormal. Hang on a sec.
Baby, 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 oh, like baby, baby.
Shut it.
Oh.